Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our 2024 Primary Candidate Forum. We'd like to first thank our host. Lori Nevin is the Executive Director of the Upper Kittitas County Senior Center, and we just appreciate you hosting us tonight. And our partners, League of Women Voters and the Rotary Club of Upper Kittitas County. Thank you so much for assisting us. My name is Amy McGuffin. I'm the CEO and President of Kittitas County Chamber of Commerce. And we are just so glad that we're here today. Our partnership with the League of Women Voters, as you can see, there's a table of items that you can take. It is yard signs, so please make sure that you take a sign today. And there's also some handouts if you would like afterwards. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I'd like to introduce you to our moderator. He will explain the rules and introduce the candidates. Gary Berg.
Thanks, Amy. So good evening, and thanks to you all for coming out. And even before we start, thanks to you for one more of these and a couple more to go, I think. So thank you for coming. We do have rules, and they're really simple. Please, don't interrupt the candidates, no clapping, no cheering, no jeering. We want to be polite. This is the opportunity to learn how these folks will do the job if they're selected in the upcoming election. And let's give them every opportunity. There will be a timer, and I'll watch the timer. Candidates, we'll let you finish the thought, but not go on. If it requires a rebut, you get 30 seconds after that. You'll have to tell me if you want to do that. We'll go in order with the candidates. Question, same question, then we'll do it the next way, and we'll do that a couple of times. I think there's at least 10 or 12 questions. Time limits. Candidates interruption. We don't want you folks interrupting each other. I don't think we have disruptive behavior from judges, but just in case. And then we'll wind it up with some audience questions. If you'll present those, you've got a card coming in, you get more. They'll bring those to me, and we'll have those at the very end of this. Hopefully, we keep it between an hour and a half and 2 hours. So with that, I would introduce these folks, and then I'll ask the first question. Mr. Chris Herion, Mr. Matt Mills, Mr. James Kirkham, and Ms. I lost your name, Patricia Todd, sorry about that. And those are candidates for the two Superior Court judge positions in Kittitas County. Okay? That said, I'll start with Mr. Herion, and then we'll go down the road. Tell us about yourself. Introduce yourself. Explain why you were running for the office, and what do you plan to accomplish in year one. Mr. Herion.
Good evening. My name is Chris Herion. I'm running for Kittitas County Superior Court Judge, position number 1. I'm running for judge because it's in keeping with the 27 years of service that commenced for me when I stepped on the yellow footprints, Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, raised my right hand, swore to uphold, defend the Constitution, and follow all lawful orders of the President of the United States. I took a second oath as a United States Army officer. I've served in many positions. I've served overseas. I've served every president since President Bill Clinton, and I'm still serving, believe it or not. I am enrolled in the United States Army War College, pursuing a Master in Strategic Studies. I served as your serious violent criminal prosecutor for 7.5 years. I served as your Special Assistant Attorney General for 8 years, representing the Department of Children, Youth, and Family Services and Child Protective Services in the investigation and removal of children from homes. Currently, I'm assigned legal counsel at the Office of Civil Legal Aid. I've also served as a public defender, judge pro tem, and involuntary commitment attorney. I'm a climber. I'm a member of the Climber Museum of Art. I've been a prior city council member on the Ellensburg City Council. I've served as Kittitas County Bar Association president. My wife and I have 4 children, and we can't think of any other place than to call Kittitas County home. After 24 years of legal practice, I believe I'm in a strong position to fulfill this role. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mills.
Thank you. My name is Matt Mills. I'm running for position 1. Currently, one of your felony deputy prosecuting attorneys for Kittitas County. I'm actually transitioning into gross misdemeanors here for a little while, but I kind of serve where I'm plugged in by Mr. Zempel. Prior to being a DPA for 5 years, for 10 years, I was in private practice. My practice kind of ran the gamut of things that a Superior Court judge would see on a day-to-day basis. Family law, custody disputes, business entity disputes, landlord-tenant, creditor-debtor, consumer protection, wills, probate, things like that. Wide variety, not everything just a Superior Court judge would see, but a fair amount. So why I'm running is my family and I were able to move to Kittitas County a little over 5 years ago. It's been a fantastic place to live in. It's been a fantastic place to raise children. I've been married for 24 years. We've got 4 kids. And this is a great opportunity, I thought, to continue to serve this county and keep it a great place to live. Some of the service I've done, I've been a youth sports coach, basketball, baseball. I've been a Cub Scout, Cub Master since before we moved out here. I've served on the board of Holly Ridge, which is a center in Kitsap County, which helps developmentally disabled adults and children. And currently my wife and my big project is working on a family retreat center down in Clerk, County, where we have some land so we can get some disability families out to enjoy the outdoors.
Thank you. Mr. Kirkham.
First off, I want to thank the League of Women Voters, the Kittitas County Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Upper Kittitas County Rotary, I believe, for putting this on. I appreciate the opportunity to come up and speak with many of you. I have been a criminal defense attorney and a small solo law firm owner for roughly 20 years. I began my career first at Central, getting a bachelor's degree after growing up here and graduating from Ellensburg High School. Went to Gonzaga, had a firm over there. Relocated back in 2008 when Ken Beckley called and said, I'm going to retire, we need a good attorney, come on back. And my family and I were ready to do that as well. I've handled a wide breadth of cases. I've prosecuted, I've defended, I've done landlord-tenant, I've done just about any type of civil case that you could imagine in the 20 years either in Spokane or in Kittitas County. I am currently on the Superior Court bench as a part-time commissioner where I do protection order, juvenile, civil, family law, probate cases and have for the last 18 months or so. I apologize for being late. I actually was in court on the juvenile docket. Happy to chat with any of you afterwards who didn't get an opportunity and would like to. I am running because I think it's the right thing to do. I think there's going to be a serious need for some judicial leadership with 2 judges retiring. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Todd.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Todd, and in addition to our great sponsors, thank you all for taking time out of your Mondays. Thank you to those who are here in person. Thank you to those out on the World Wide Web who may be watching today or in the future sometime. Who am I? I am an 18-year attorney. For 16 of those years, I've been one of your public servants. Why am I running? I want to serve. It's as simple as that. For 16 years, I've honed a public service role as an assistant attorney general. And through that, I learned that serving people is the way to contribute to community. That's what I want to do. When it comes to why does my background align, I'm someone who's handled complex civil cases that involve over $100 million of risk, death cases. I've done defense work in that area. I've also done plaintiff's work in big cases. I helped the state collect $22 million when the Skagit River Bridge collapsed from the at-fault parties. I want to serve because I have the skills to do it. I'm also someone who is in court routinely, 3 days a week I'm in court. I've picked up vast procedural experience in my civil practice and as a prosecutor currently. in the criminal division, for example. And through that, I've seen hardworking judges. They work tirelessly on all of our behalfs. I want to serve just like that. And in the first year, that's what I would plan to do, is serve you all.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Mills. What specific experiences and qualifications make you the best candidate for this position?
Well, I've touched on my breadth of experience. In my opening, I have a wide variety of what a Superior Court judge would see. I think another good piece of experience I have is helping launch the behavioral health court in the district courts of Kittitas County. It's a program that it's modeled a lot after a drug court. I think therapeutic courts are extremely important. I'd love to see a felony level mental health court in Kittitas County. I think we could probably find the funds for it, but now that I've helped get the BHC off the ground and with the great model of the drug court at the felony level, I think that is an experience I could use to help us get a mental health court and not only save folks' lives, but save the community a lot of money from people whose offenses recur because they have mental health and or drug problems. So I think that's another big piece of the puzzle for me.
Thank you. Mr. Kirk?
Thank you. I feel like to a certain extent I'm going to echo Mr. Mills a lot tonight because I follow him. I too have been married for 24 years and have 4 kids, and I too helped implement the behavioral health court when Judge Sander decided to put it on. I am uniquely qualified of the candidates because I'm already on the bench. I was appointed 18 months ago as a Superior Court Commissioner. I've had that time to experience the job, to know what the job entails. And the job is a lot more than just sitting in court, making decisions, calling balls and strikes, so to speak. The job is so much more. There's administrative duties that have to be done. I've attended a judicial college as a commissioner and also 2 judicial conferences whereby I have education to help me be a good judge. And in addition, there's a lot that goes into budget, reaching out to different stakeholders. As I indicated, I grew up here, I'm from here, and have connections to be able to fulfill those.
Thank you, Ms. Todd.
The specific experiences I have that make me qualified for the job are really twofold. One, I've been in a vast number of courtrooms in courthouses from Bellingham all the way to Vancouver, Washington. I've represented the state throughout our state, and I've seen incredible judges. I've also seen judges who were not incredible. I plan on being that kind of judge who listens carefully, prepares, and reaches the just result. When I think about, well, what are my qualifications? I've worked on big cases and small cases. I've been on both sides of the issue. There's some candidates who can say, oh, I can see both sides. I've actually done plaintiff's work and defense work in the civil arena. I've prosecuted and I've done defense work in the criminal arena. Currently, as a deputy prosecuting attorney, I've been representing the county on drug crimes and violent crimes, and I serve on the drug court. I've been asked twice by Judge Hooper to fill in when she couldn't, and I've seen just how hard she works full-time.
Thank you. Mr. Herion?
Well, I too have been married 24 years and we have 4 kids. And we share the same anniversary date, May 19th, 2001. That was purely coincidental. I have 24 years of legal experience, 16 in Kittitas County, and the other 8 primarily in Benton County, Washington. Practiced in almost all the counties east of the mountains. However, what makes me uniquely qualified is my military background. Within that same span of 24 years, I've served nearly 17 years as a Judge Advocate General. As a Judge Advocate General in the United States Army Reserves, we deal with rules of engagement, national security law, administrative separation of officers in enlisted or detention, and I've defended soldiers who've been seriously wounded in combat and needed benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will start with Mr. Kirkham. What are the top 3 priorities or issues you will address if elected and how do you plan to tackle them?
Top 3 priorities or issues. Well, we obviously as judicial candidates, we can't talk about specific issues or how we rule on a case, but there are a few things that I have in mind. One is access to justice. I believe that Kittitas County is a little bit behind in getting people, especially unrepresented litigants, information to be able to effectively get to court. We don't have a court facilitator. That would be one thing that I would attempt to try and resolve, and if not, at least do videos and how-tos with regards to how to get some of your cases filed. The second issue that I would want to tackle is just efficiency in the judicial system. We have a rise in cases and we're not efficient about how we do it. In the last 18 months, I've been able to get computers actually put in the courtroom as well as printers. And the third issue that I would want to tackle is access to attorneys. We have a lack of attorneys.
Thank you. Ms. Todd?
Three top priorities that I can see that we can all work on as a county. And this is reaching to no fault of anyone who's come before, but in terms of what can we each bring and what can we serve. When I see efficiency in the courtroom, what I want to see is more time spent with judges making substantive decisions. We spend a lot of time on calendaring, on looking for ways and having ideas about how can we make that time more efficient. How can we make sure that we're using the judge's intellect for those substantive times and other alternatives for those scheduling needs? Sometimes there does need to be a court hearing for those, and sometimes we can be more efficient about what we do. Secondly, when we talk about how if you have a court case, you want this to get moving so you can go on with whatever is next in your life. I really want to look at the age of cases to make sure we're moving cases along in an effective way. One way to do that is make sure that we're using the greatest tools from the Office of the Commissioner of the Courts to make sure if there's better e-filing and other tools, we can use them. And as I'm out of time, I'll save my third one to wrap into another answer.
It'll come around. Mr. Herion?
Top 3 issues, I have none. I'm running for Superior Court Judge. I'm not running for the legislature. I'm not running for the County Commissioner's office. We can hold court right here. You choose a judge, you don't even need the technology. That's the way it was done long before all this technology. It's the rules that govern. It's the individual judge. You are seeking to be independent, ensure the integrity of the process, and to be impartial and uphold due process of law under the 14th Amendment. However, I do believe that a judge in Superior Court should make him or herself available to the public by way of mock court, meeting people, attending functions in order to promote the judiciary and make it accessible to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis?
So I've actually put a lot of thought in this. I have a section on my website about it. I think that we're losing a lot of institutional memory with Judge Sparks and Judge Hooper leaving, and we're going to need to figure out that's an opportunity and a problem. I think the opportunity is that the two new judges are going to sit down and take a hard look at our court rules, how we run our dockets. I know there's been some suggestions from the prosecutor's office that haven't really fallen in deaf ears. If you know their fault of their own, it's just the way they're running their courts. But I think with new blood, we can take a look at it. I think things like paperless systems. I've done a lot of doorbelling, and I've heard people ask me, why is it taking me 2 years and $30,000 to get a divorce in this county? And that's a good question. And things like mandatory mediation might be necessary. And I think Mr. Kirkham's got a good idea of the courthouse facilitator. In most counties I practice in have that. We have to look and see if we can implement that here. But I think that's where we start.
Thank you. The next question will start with Ms. Todd. What do you feel is the most important skill or attribute for a judge? And give us an example of a time when you demonstrated this.
The most important attribute you want of a judge is someone who's fair. To be fair, you need to be impartial, you need to have high integrity, and you need to be independent. I've been an advocate most of my legal career, And so I haven't had to be independent. I haven't had to be impartial. But as a public servant for 16 years, I've had to be fair. As a public servant and an attorney, you have the highest ethical obligations to be transparent in your dealings, to provide the legal documents that are required, to not play legal games, to think about not just the parties in front of you, but also how does this benefit the entire state when you represent the state, and the county when you represent the county. So I bring 16 years of being fair and minded in terms of looking at all the needs that are at the table, and not just finding what my client needs most, but also the big picture. You need a judge who can see the big picture.
Thank you. Mr. Herion.
Certainly, fairness, impartiality. Thomas Jefferson is my inspiration for judicial philosophy, that is being untethered to subjective experience. But what can I bring uniquely? 2006, I was involved in a situation where I represented a client and what became known as dollars for deals. Unfortunately, my client had previously paid his attorney and the previous prosecutors down in Benton County money to get out of the DUI, brought it to my attention because he was upset with my representation. And that put me in quite a bind. Put him in quite a bind. And it presented me with a lot of ethical dilemmas. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I was guided by the rules of professional conduct, the advice of many colleagues, and we came through that. I would bring that type of integrity to the bench. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mills.
Obviously, fairness, integrity, ability to listen are important. The ability to take in information from various sources. If you're doing a bench trial of facts, if you're doing ruling on a motion hearing, what the lawyers bring to you, you need to be able to process that, take in the information, make sure you're not using any of your predisposed biases to make a decision. I think my previous career, I was in biochemistry. I was a trained scientist, and that was a lot of what I did. Process data, come to, and figure out what this data is actually telling us. I think that kind of translates into what a judicial officer has to do, because we're going to take in a lot of information and have to come to a decision. I think I do that now as a prosecutor. When a defense attorney like Mr. Kirkham brings me some new information, I will take a look at it, make sure I'm being fair, maybe run it past the other prosecutors, and come to the conclusion I need to come to.
Thank you. Mr. Kirkham.
Every one of the candidates up here has integrity. Every one of them will take the bench impartially. That goes without saying. The one thing Kittitas County has this year is 4 good, solid candidates. So really the question, it should be, what do you have that other people don't that's important? And it's one thing is judicial temperament. People want to be heard when they come to court. They want to be able to be heard despite the fact that there's language barriers, despite the fact that there are access to justice issues because they're unrepresented, despite the fact that they don't know all of the rules. As judges, we can't give legal advice, but we can help people ferret through the procedural issues. I have 18 months of experience already doing that, and that is the most important thing, in my opinion, that a judge needs, judicial temperament.
Thank you. The next question, we're back to Mr. Herion to start with. This question is, what motivated you to pursue a career in the judiciary?
What motivated me to pursue a career in the judiciary? I think perhaps all of us, with our experience, come to a point where we ask, what's next? And I have reached that in my career. I'm in 05 in the United States Army Reserves as a lieutenant colonel, moving towards 06. And the military is a great progression. They start you off as a lieutenant, and they treat you as a lieutenant, and you learn your level of experience. And I think similarly when you're working your way as a practitioner in the state system, you learn every level: district court, juvenile court, superior court. I spent most of my time in superior court. That's where I'm most comfortable, is in superior court. If I had spent perhaps more of my career in district court, then I probably, maybe I would have run for a district court judge position. But I think at this stage, Superior Court.
Thank you. Mr. Mills?
The short answer is, why did I decide to run? When I saw that there's going to be 2 open seats, I asked myself, is this something I think I'd be good at? And not only would I be good at, would I be good at it in service to Kittitas County? I came to the conclusion the answer was yes. I think there's a lot of good lawyers out there, and a lot of them would tell you that, really admit, hey, I'm a great lawyer, I would not make a good judge. But I believe that I do have those qualities, that temperament, like Mr. Kirkham was talking about, the ability to listen and process information. And Kittitas County is such a special place to live that I really would like to make sure that going into the next 25, 30 years, we have a Superior Court that serves the people and is efficient and keeps us a great place to live.
Thank you. Mr. Kirk?
Thank you. If you had asked me about 3.5 years ago if I was going to run for judge, I would have told you, heck no, this wasn't in the cards. And in the last several years, I've noticed quite a few things. About 2 years ago, I started pro temping just to help the court out a little bit because Judge Sparks wasn't as available as he used to be. We started to enter a little bit of a public defender crisis in the nation as well as the state. I agreed after working with the district court to take all of their public defense cases for 3 months with several other attorneys so that they could get an Office of Public Defense set up. I worked on getting the behavioral health court set up. I liked the way that things were going in the county, and when it became apparent that Judge Sparks, who's been kind of a mentor to me, was going to retire, I started thinking about it, and I started thinking, well, I think I could do this, and I think I could do this well. For the last, since 2008, when I moved back, this community's given me a lot, and I want to give back.
Thank you. Ms. Todd?
What motivates me is simple. I want you to have the best. I want you to have the best judge who has the most complex experience. I also want you to have someone who is knowledgeable about how courts handle Superior Court cases, big cases, and pro se cases, and every case in between. I've been beneficiary of being in front of wonderful judges. Let me tell you a quick story of a time I wasn't in front of a wonderful judge. I was needed in 3 different courts at one time. Went early to ask the judicial assistant, hey, could I have my matter heard first? I have these other courts that I have to get to. Judicial assistant gives me a funny look. And then she's like, well, you can try it. So I proceeded to try to call my case first when the judge took the bench. And he said, no, you're number 17, you can sit down. And I was shocked, and I hadn't been warned. And then the next 14 matters that were called, each attorney said they weren't ready. And so I got to have my matter first. I saw what working together is, and I saw how there could be better ways to handle some courthouses. This wouldn't happen in Kittitas County, but it motivated me early on to think about being a judge.
Thank you.
Yes.
Next question, we'll start with Mr. Mills. How do you ensure that the jury selection process remains fair and impartial?
Well, the jury selection process it's a boilerplate thing for the judge. We bring in the jury pool. The judge will bring in the jury pool from wherever the clerk gets them from the voter rolls, and read the instructions, ask about various conflicts people might have, and then the attorneys take over. And the judge certainly has a role to play to make sure that the attorneys are not striking people because they're a racial minority or some other kind of minority or things of that nature, but to make sure that every person who's at jury selection has a chance to be a juror. But a lot of it's out of the judge's hand. It's the panel that comes in and the attorneys who get to use their preemptory challenges, but there is some role for judging. We just follow the law that's well established for jury selection.
Thank you. Mr. Kirkham?
Well, I certainly agree with Mr. Mills to a certain extent, but there's so much more to it than that. There is actually a decision whether to have a jury coordinator through the clerk's office or through court administration. Currently, Kittitas County has it going through court administration. Whether or not jurors come in and where they're summoned from are largely determined by a software program that basically randomly summons people in. My wife's had it 4 or 5 times in the last few years. I haven't had it at all. So that's the first step. But the judge actually has a lot more discretion and a lot more effect on that than one would think. What we need to do is actually have some policies on excusing people. Many people are excused prior to ever coming to court to have that conversation with the judge, and it's based on the policies and procedures that are set up, as well as the discretion of the people on the bench and set by statute as well.
Thank you. Ms. Todd?
Glad you asked this question about jury selection and the process, because it isn't always well known to people who come to the courthouse what's expected. Judges have a unique role in harnessing resources to make sure the right information's getting out to jurors. When it comes to their summons, making sure that they're having resources to figure out what is jury service, where do I need to go, how clear is it. This third priority that question was asked about, what other priorities might the judicial candidates have? I really want to look to see whether or not a court facilitator would help jurors to access our courthouse, to understand how it works, so we're making sure that in our process, we're getting a wide swath of people. We're not getting the same person called 5 times, and somebody not called ever. To do that, to have a real fair and impartial jury, we need to look at that selection process and make sure we're drawing from all those correct sources, so we're getting that group of people to put it together.
Thank you. Mr. Herion?
Well, General Rule 37 provides it eliminates jurors based on race or ethnicity. Provides Code of Washington 2.36. The pool of voters comes from the Washington driver's license database and voter registration records as well. And Civil Rule 6.4 governs the voir dire process. But there is a human component to it. Judge Michael Cooper, who some of you may remember, he set the tone. He didn't say a whole lot, which said a whole lot. But one thing he would say at the beginning of every trial is we're all human beings. We're coming into this with preconceived notions and prejudices, and I need to encourage you to follow the law, follow the instructions I give you. He set the tone, and I think that's probably the biggest thing a judge can do in the jury selection process. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Kirkham. Can you provide an example of a time when you had to make a particularly difficult or unpopular decision? What factors did you weigh, and how did you arrive at the decision? Can you repeat that if you want?
No, that's all right. And I think I had about 4 of them today on the juvenile docket. Those cases are still pending, so I won't use one of those. You know, a few years ago, the legislature saw fit to transform the Uniform Guardianship Act and create it rather than have the process of conservatorship and guardianship that was before. So basically has minor guardianships, adult guardianships, and they created some very unique rules and very unique standards for minor guardianships that don't actually take into consideration the best interest of the child at all. And I think that that's a mistake that the legislature made. I had a case probably about a year ago that is over and done with now, where I had to very specifically look at the facts of the case, gauge them towards the law that I was required to follow as a judicial officer, and make a decision I didn't want to make. And that's how I did it, by what the law was.
Thank you. Ms. Todd?
As a senior counsel, I supervised over 100 people, and part of this department was called Litigation Support Services. One of my jobs was to oversee training of trial attorneys and appellate attorneys. And there were many attorneys who had been practicing a long time, and they decided, I don't need litigation support services. I don't need anyone telling me how to try my case or pitching my case to them or trying to improve the theme of the case or how it was done. And so one difficult decision was really looking at, were client services being met by working with the client agencies? And then when they weren't being met, is there a trial component that we could have been holding our attorneys to so they were trained better to provide services to these clients when it came to trial? And so while it was unpopular to require some very senior attorneys to go through a trial training, it improved results. It improved the attitude that clients had, and the relationship between the client and the attorney got better. I followed what was right and what was right for my clients.
Thank you. Mr. Herion?
Could you please repeat the question?
I will. Can you provide an example of a time when you had to make a particularly difficult or unpopular decision? What factors did you weigh, and how did you arrive at that decision?
Yeah, so when I arrived in Kittitas County, the prime case was a Japanese garden case. I mean, some of you may remember, 9-year-old brutal situation at the Japanese garden. And we knew the individual, we had him dead to right in terms of DNA and a lot of evidence. There's a lot of pressure on the case. And the biggest decision we faced in that particular case was the individual had committed the same type of offense in other areas, essentially a serial rapist. And whether we deal such a case, knowing that he probably would spend life imprisonment, or we go to trial. And we put a young girl on the witness stand. We chose the latter, and it was an extremely difficult case. Take the expedient route, or go to trial. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mills?
I'm dealing with a case right now, without getting into too many specifics, where I had to charge it one way, and it was very unpopular with some of the victims, the families of the victims. But what I did is I had to listen to my investigators. I had to look at the evidence. I had to weigh what the RCW actually said. Basically, there was two severe ways to charge a case, two severities. And if it's the lesser, it's not what the family wanted to hear, that's not what the family civil attorneys wanted to hear. But it was something where I had to say, hey, this is what the evidence says, this is what my investigators are telling me, we have to do what's right for the people of the state of Washington, and that's charge this case per the law. Now, that's the difficult thing that springs to mind right now. I'm sure I've dealt with tens or dozens of those cases over the past 15 years.
Thank you. Okay, the next question will start with Ms. Todd. What strategies have you used to foster growth and learning among legal professionals you have managed or mentored?
The most important skill in fostering this growth potential in people that I've mentored and managed is listening. Listening to where they come from, listening to what they perceive they're good at and where they need growth, and then guiding them along the way. Good judges do the same thing. They listen to all the evidence. They sometimes use the advocates to guide their answers to questions that they need in the law. You may not realize that judges can only rule on what's in front of them. And so a good advocate will bring everything the judge needs. Sometimes that doesn't always happen. And judges are in a place to ask the advocates, I need more briefing on this issue, or I need more time to study this issue. The kind of character that it takes to listen and bring out the best of the people in front of you is something that I bring to this position.
Thank you. Mr. Herion?
What I've specifically done to mentor and manage attorneys, I'm doing right now with the United States Army JAG officer. I have a staff of attorneys, one's currently deployed in Kuwait. We have some here stateside. We receive cases. The one who delegates those cases out. We staff those cases. We review those cases, decide courses of action, while at the same time maintaining our standards. A bit different from the civilian world. There's standards that still have to be maintained, physical fitness standards, training standards. And they look to me, it is a heavy load, because when you're promoted and you're at that rank and they put you in that position by selection, then you're peer reviewed. Every year we're peer reviewed. And if your staff doesn't appreciate you, it will show. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mills.
You got 21 hours to answer this one. Once you figures that out, I'll just say that we've got a young group of legal assistants in our office. One of them I was able to help in the Rule 6 program, which is the program where you can study to become a lawyer without going to law school. That was a pretty rewarding experience because you get to open a textbook and do case law, and I remember that. It was rewarding. Helping legal assistants who come in and are starting to learn criminal law on their way to being either a paralegal or maybe going to law school. It's great because they ask you questions you haven't really thought about as an attorney in a while. Like, well, why do we charge something like that, or why does the court do that particular way? But that's where I am right now. It's great to be able to answer questions, and I do it for lesser experienced attorneys too. That's how I just try to listen to people's concerns and give them the best answer I can.
Thanks. Mr. Kirkham.
I think be available is probably the biggest thing. I've always thought that my success was partly due to the community that I've been in, either early on in Spokane or recently since 2008 when I moved back to town. The Ellensburg community, I felt that I should always be available and give back. Even this morning, I had an intern from Kittitas High School on the bench with me because she wanted to do a job shadow. Over the years, I probably had a dozen central interns interested in going to law school. For the past 3.5 years, I have been working with my legal assistant, Josie Booth, to actually get her license. She's currently a Rule 9 legal licensed intern who's been going into court since March as an attorney. So I've also, on occasion, over the past few years, allowed a couple of younger attorneys to second chair murder cases that I took to trial. I've always felt that I should be available.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Herion, we're back to you. How would you handle a situation in your courtroom where a party is poorly represented by an unprepared or ineffective attorney, or where the attorney exhibits unethical conduct?
Yeah, you have to tread lightly. It's based on the facts and circumstances and what has happened or happening before you. We attorneys are just like anybody else. They come into court, some more prepared, some less prepared, some not really prepared, and you have to balance it. It's like that scales of justice. And you have to keep in mind the particular case in front of you. You don't want to be premature in perhaps calling out an attorney on something specific you may see. You have to consider the case in its whole. But certainly having effective assistance of counsel is absolutely essential to the system. And certainly those who come into the system and want to represent themselves, my position's always been, I intend to persuade them out of that decision. Thank you.
Mr. Mills.
That's kind of two questions, because unethical is a lot different than unprepared. If you're exhibiting unethical behavior, then I think the judge's obligation is full stop. Figure out what's going on, continue the case until that can be dealt with. Unprepared is a little different. People have the right to have the attorney of their choice. There's a constitutional right for effective assistance of counsel, so I guess it would also depend. Is this a criminal trial? Is this a murder trial? Is this a divorce trial? Is it someone suing someone over 15 grand and 50 grand in damage? But I think it's got to be a case-by-case basis. I think education after the fact, which may not help the particular person being represented, but it could help the attorney long term. But I think it's a case-by-case basis, and you have to be very careful.
Thank you. Mr. Kirk?
Well, I agree with both of these people with what they've said. With Mr. Mills, unethical is a little different than unprepared. However, under the rules of professional conduct, diligence and preparedness is being unethical. As far as what candidate Herion indicated, judges only get a small piece of the pie. We get what's presented to us, and we have to be careful not to influence one side or the other. We can only make decisions based on what's brought before us. Certainly, if there was an indication that an attorney was behaving unethically in front of me, I would have a duty to report. I would not be able to investigate it. Unprepared or other issues that don't rise to the level of ethical concerns, I actually, probably 3 months into being on the bench, called a couple of attorneys into chambers. It was appropriate because it was an ex parte, and told them they were being unprofessional and it needed to stop.
Thank you. Ms. Todd?
You asked a question about ineffective conduct or unethical conduct. And like you in your positions, the first thing you use is your common sense. As a judge, you're doing the same thing. You're in a leadership role and you're using your common sense. You're looking at the short-run problem, that's the current hearing, and are the individual's rights being cared for? And if they're not, you'll have to find a way to set it over to get qualified counsel in that short run. And your common sense doesn't end there, because there's also the long-run issue. And if you have someone appearing in front of you who is unethical or ineffective, attorneys have a high bar in terms of their performance. They have a ton of public trust involved in what they're doing. And because of that, attorneys are responsible for all the roles. Judges have all the attorney requirements, and they have the code of judicial conduct with its 4 canons. And you're additionally responsible for reporting up if you see someone who's behaving in that way.
Thank you. So, Mr. Mills, we'll start with you, and this is the last prepared question, so you're nearly there. In what ways do you believe that judges can positively impact their communities beyond the courtroom?
Outreach, a big part of, I'm finding as I go door to door that there's a lot of confusion about what a Superior Court judge or a district court judge, for that matter, does, where, what our position is in the community. I think outreach through education, for visiting high school or something like that would be a great thing to do. Being a leader, you have to step back a little bit, but just being a positive role model for the community, I think. I would definitely like to keep being a sports coach and being a Boy Scout leader and things like that. And say, this guy, he's a judge and he does this at night. We can see the way he acts as a coach or a Boy Scout leader. He must bring that same kind of work ethic and values to his being a judge. I think that helps just being visible in the community like that.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk.
Well, there's quite a few things. There actually used to be a law day that happened in Kittitas County where attorneys and judges would go out to the schools and actually talk about what it meant, and that has fallen by the wayside. There is still some outreach that's been happening. Central Washington University has a mock trial team, and in December they came to the courthouse Friday evening and spent several hours doing a case back and forth that had been written up. They also go and do different events and whatnot, and I had the opportunity to be involved in that and talk to each of those students. This is another area where I think knowing the community, knowing the stakeholders, knowing the people would benefit in that outreach, contacting the schools and doing law day again, working with all of the various stakeholders to come to an understanding that, hey, we need to get out there. Being a judge historically in Kittitas County has been very isolating, and it by its very nature is isolating, but it doesn't mean that judges can't be more involved in the community.
Thank you. Ms. Todd?
You all know our community is what makes this place so special. That's why we all care about it. When I've reached out to voters, whether I'm at the farmer's market or parade or doorbelling, people in our community care. Judges have a positive impact outside the courtroom if they perform well inside the courtroom. Judges who treat litigants with respect, who craft just resolutions when the parties recommend them, then send out a group of community members who have a respect for the law, a respect for the people that were involved, and because of that, people care more about the community. Judges also can be leaders in the community. I'm someone who has been enjoying volunteering, whether it's at the Trellis Center or at 4-H or any of Girl Scout or school district events. Judges are just like you as well. They have a different job, but they care about the community too. They've got interests and talents, and we all are looking for ways to give back.
Thank you. Mr. Herion.
Yeah, I would agree with my colleagues. I mean, judges are leaders in the community. That's what you are electing. And a judge needs to be a leader on and off the bench, including in the grocery store. When somebody comes up and just talks to you. I'm on the Clymer Museum of Art. I love the Clymer Museum. John Clymer, born in Ellensburg in 1907, joined the Marine Corps. I'm attracted to him. You know, I can think, God, can I stay on the Clymer? But I love it. 4-H has a government section. They go to Olympia. A judge can be instrumental in that particular process in education. Our schools, speaking to our schools, our high schools in the county, grade schools, middle schools. I live by Mount Stewart. They would love to see a judge in their classroom. And the YMCA mock trial. I did a lot of that in Benton County before I came to Kittitas County in 2008 and thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed the judges that presided all over those cases. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a couple of questions that came from the audience, and I'll come up here, and that'll wind us up. I think starting with, did we do you first last time? Mr. Kirkham. There is a popular misconception that the clerk works for the judge. What will you do to reveal the truth to correct the misconception?
Well, that's actually an interesting issue because there were comments made earlier about, well, you know, we should have paperless files. Well, one thing that a lot of people don't know as well is that it's the clerk's file. It's not the judge's. It's not the court administration. But recently at one of the judicial meetings that we had, we talked about how even on the website, the judiciary is listed as a department. We're not a department. We're our own separate deal, and the clerks are their own separate deal. And small things like that can go a long way. But just simply educating the public about what the different pieces do and how they come together. I think that that's the biggest thing. I recently at Judicial College conference here a month or so ago, they had a presentation on AI and how it can be used, and it's discouraged to be used for actually doing any legal work because there's a lot of issues with it. But one gentleman had done a podcast based on uploading a brief, and it worked fantastically. I think we could utilize some of those tools.
Thank you. Ms. Todd.
Two ideas come to mind in helping educate how it is that the clerks don't work for the judge. The first is building on this concept of education, but more than just education, putting the information out there. When you walk into the county courthouse, it's hard to figure out who is the clerk. Where can you look for that information? Is it in the best place? Is the judge information in the best place? Looking with a fresh eye of how we're communicating that when people are using the courthouse, whether it's physically or on the web. The second one is also explaining the process. We have great judges in Kittitas County who are meticulous when litigants come to the court, and they explain the process of what's happening in their case. They ask litigants, do you understand what's happening? Judges can keep doing that by making really clear what the clerk controls and what's controlled by a judicial administration. Part of that process takes a little bit of time, but it makes each of the users more educated, which then has a ripple effect and spreads out that information.
Thank you. Mr. Herion.
The clerk is elected by you. The judge is elected by you. That doesn't mean the two are in conflict. In fact, they work together. I think any judge on the bench, district court, superior court, would acknowledge that whatever the judge rules or writes is only as effective as the paperwork that's filed. The clerk's office is absolutely essential. Perhaps some of you have gone to the clerk's office so you could travel overseas for passports. There's a whole range of services that the clerk's office provides. I think the misconception comes into play because if somebody walks in the courtroom, they see the judge and they'll see the clerk who's on loan from the elected clerk. And the judge might be handing paperwork and it may appear that way. But in fact, those are two separate offices, the two offices which work together.
Thank you. Mr. Bill.
There's been some great answers. I think in doorbelling, I've come across this once in a while. How would you get along with the clerk? And the current clerk I get along with great. And I got along with the last clerk great too. But and I have said, hey, this is she's a separate elected official. The judge would be a separate elected official. The prosecutor is a separate elected official. But we all have to work together. The only thing that comes to mind that hasn't covered other three is in Kittitas County, we kind of have, when you walk up the stairs, you go to the clerk's office, here's the clerk's office, here's the Superior Court. There's no real distinction between the two. Maybe we could shore that up a little bit, the clerk's office and office of the Superior Court or something like that, just to give people a visual cue that, hey, these are two different people. But otherwise, just education and outreach again.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Todd. Last question. The caseload in Superior Court is what percentage civil versus criminal, and how much experience have you had with each?
So research this recently, so many of you know civil is when your liberty is not at risk. Generally it's some other legal right. Criminal is when your liberty, you can be punished by jail or prison. So when we think about our court system, you might look at the dockets and see how many days are civil and criminal. That wouldn't tell you how many cases. You have to go to the Washington Court website and it lists by county. Generally our county has had 2/3 civil cases, so our property right or other legal right at issue, not your liberty, and 1/3 criminal. Although our court dockets are often devoted highly to criminal cases because of all of the required constitutional protections that people accused of a crime have. The kind of experience I have 15 years of complex civil experience. I've seen just about every kind of civil case you can imagine on both sides of it, and that's the unique experience I bring to the majority of the cases that Kittitas County sees in terms of numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, there's more civil than criminal. However, as my colleague said, and I'm sure the other colleagues would echo it, criminal has priority for obvious reasons. Your liberty is at stake. I've worked in both. From 2000 to 2015, I primarily worked in criminal law, be it prosecution, criminal defense, district court, juvenile court, superior court. I did represent persons in involuntary commitment proceedings for a long time, persons who were committed against their will due to mental health issues. I practiced in the civil side in family law for many years, divorces, protection orders. And most recently, in the last 8+ years, I've worked at the Attorney General's office, filing dependency petitions on behalf of children removed from homes by the Department of Children, Youth, and Family Services, which is the petitioning party in Child Protective Services, and currently also working in civil cases representing those children.
Thank you. Mr.
Yeah, I think the rule of thumb for most of the jurisdictions I've worked in has been about 1/3 criminal, 2/3 civil, and with obviously some categories on either side of that. Obviously, for the last 5 years, I've done exclusively criminal law prosecution. In my private practice career before that, for about 10, 11 years, I did mostly civil. I did some criminal defense. But then again, civil's also broken up into things like landlord-tenant and then versus family law, and those are two very different beasts, and just general civil litigation. I've had my fingers in both of those pies through private practice. I've done some really complex construction defect cases where we had 3 trials, we had binders and binders of evidence, and some hard divorces and then, some easy divorces. But that's where my experience lays.
Okay, I believe at this point, we're ready for you to have the closing statement.
Miss Kirkham, he didn't.
Oh, did I miss one? Oh, I'm sorry. I got caught up in my own.
If you don't want to hear from me, that's all right. But I'd like the opportunity to answer. Do I get an extra 30 seconds? Because having done it for a year, absolutely 2/3 civil, 1/3 criminal, but you need to actually weight the cases to know how much time is needed for both. Many of the civil cases, protection orders are usually one hearing, maybe 2 hearings. Unlawful detainer, 1 hearing, maybe 2 hearings. Probate, a couple of hearings would take a very short amount of time, and most of the orders are agreed orders. So really substantially, the amount of time a judge needs to put into civil or criminal is probably 50-50. However, due to staffing issues as well as court dockets over the last couple of years, plus we had COVID, we need to prioritize allowing civil cases to get out to trial more. One of the things about a family law trial is you don't need a jury, it's a judge. There's no reason why we can't utilize the 2 courtrooms that we have, as well as look at other options such as using the armory or having court up here and taking over Judge Juris's courtroom when he's not using it in order to facilitate getting those cases out.
Thank you for that. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I forgot to mention, so since you forgot me, I'll say, I've done just about every type of case. I prosecuted a couple of major sex cases over in Stevens County just because I wanted to see that side of it. But every other type of civil I've done, complex and non-complex.
Okay. So starting with Mr. Herion, you have 60 seconds as closing statement.
In 22 days, you will choose 2 Superior Court judges who will chart the county's next legal chapter. I've conducted a 100% self-funded grassroots campaign, which is consistent with the independence, integrity, and impartiality of the judiciary. My 24 years of legal practice is anchored by 16 years of service in this county, 17 years as a Judge Advocate General. Your Superior Court judge is the center of gravity in the courtroom, a leader. You're electing a leader. That leader must possess the knowledge, education, experience, training, and skill, and must also possess the life experience to exercise proper judicial temperament and shepherd the process. At each stage of my life, I've always been aware of the importance of each position, whether son, brother, Marine, Army officer, attorney, husband, father. I would treat the Superior Court judge position with the same level of importance. I ask for your vote on November 5th.
Thank you. Mr. Mills.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out tonight and listening to this extremely thrilling discussion of our Superior Court. It is very important. Not only do we have 2 new judges, this is a big time, big pivotal point for the community. I based my life on service, maybe not military service, but I've definitely lived to serve my community through various ways. And I think this is I'm a natural candidate for these Superior Court judge. I ask you just to look at my endorsements, especially the people who know both me and Mr. Herion. Greg Zeppel, we both work for him, he endorsed me. Miss Elum, who is our primary opponent, she's endorsed me. Mr. Ken Beckley from the defense side, who's been around for a long time, has endorsed me. All 5 mayors of Kittitas County have endorsed me, and Judge Juris has endorsed me. And just Upper County sometimes is the kind of the redheaded stepchild. I've enjoyed my time. I've enjoyed having Mr. Juris show me around, and just ask me to vote in November.
Thank you. Mr. Kirkham.
If you want to check out the judges, both locally as well as statewide, who have endorsed me, and the attorneys who have endorsed me, because they're familiar with my work on a day-to-day basis. They're familiar with my temperament. They're familiar with what I've been able to do over the last 20 years. I have always felt a strong sense of community, been very involved through the years. I coached Little League when I just really didn't want to, even after my son broke his arm the first week. I've been involved in the Ed Foundation on an annual basis. My firm has been blessed to sponsor many different events and be involved in the community here in Upper County, the scholarship for kids that they do every year. I've always felt like it was my duty to give back because the community's given me a lot. But really, the most important thing that we're going to need is some judicial leadership. I think I can provide that. I've tapped into the institutional knowledge over the last 18 months and also have the connection statewide to tap into more.
Thank you. Ms. Todd.
It's an honor to be a candidate for judicial election. It's an honor to run for Superior Court. This campaign trail has been equally honoring and humbling. Knocking on doors, introducing yourself, sharing a little bit about you, interrupting a day. That takes some true character, some integrity. When it comes to why, why are we here? You all care about the community. I want you to have the very best. I want you to have the best in legal knowledge. I want you to have the best in experience. I want you to have the best in who reflects you. I want you to have the best in who follows the law consistently and continues to reach out to the community. This is monumental. We have 2 amazing judges who are retiring. Those are big shoes to fill. It would be my honor to continue 16 years of public service to step into that next role because I want you to have the very best. Because when you need a court and you want a community that's strong, you want to vote for the best.
Thank you. Thank the 4 of you. Give them a hand. So, in closing, for me, and guys, I used to be a mayor. In closing doesn't always mean a lot. But I want to take a moment as a former county commissioner as well. There's 3 branches of government in our country: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. We're going to vote for the top judicial segment of our county with these 4 folks. They take it very seriously with their time. I appreciate their time. And as a county commissioner, I can only say that I respect what they do. I don't know if it's still done or not. I've been gone a while, but I used to go to the drug court. Does it still exist?
Yes, it certainly does.
This is a process that the judicial takes on to take essentially anybody who's at risk with drugs and alcohol and give them the opportunity to go through a series of classes and trainings, and ultimately, if they complete it, the judge graduates them from that drug court. And that will bring a tear to your eye, I guarantee it. So this is a critical position. I used to get asked if the judges work for me. It's a novel thought. But no, they are totally separate, run their own organization, as do the district courts. So again, thank you guys very much. Thank you all, and we will call this a night.